Hello, everyone. This is Carol Dimitrov with OPA Community Outreach, and we are pleased today to have Wendy Stacey with us. And Wendy is going to be talking about muddy waters can clear Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. And with Saturn and Neptune in Pisces muddying the waters, it is often difficult to see how deep and unsettling things may be. However, while these transits trigger planets and mutable signs, we can alter our perception and sink ourselves into mystery and vision, beauty and romance. This talk will explore the positive ways one can experience these transits. And I love this little saying that Wendy added from Muddy Waters, a quote that the blues had a baby and they called it rock and roll. I just absolutely love that, Wendy.
Thanks,
Many
Carol.
of you know Wendy already, but Wendy is the principal of the International Mayo School of Astrology and chair of the Astrological Association. She has written numerous articles for the Astrological Journal and is author of Consulting with Astrology and Uranus Square Pluto. She has contributed to The New Generation, The Professional Astrologer, and Bitcoin. And in 2014, Wendy received the Charles Harvey Award for exceptional service to astrology. Wendy is also a tutor on the MA Cultural Astronomy and Astrology course at the University of Wales. Wendy's link is in your mailing, so you can just click on that and go right to our website. Wendy has all kinds of amazing offerings and classes and things that you can partake in. And Wendy is also, while I'm thinking about it, Wendy, you are also doing a mentorship program for OPA. It
Yeah,
starts in May.
that's
So,
correct.
so be sure, I'll go ahead and put that link in to the mailing that you get your recording link so everyone has that. Wendy, thank you, and we'll get started.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Um, Irene's asked me if the title of my talk is inspired by the way of the peaceful warrior as well. Maybe, but not deliberately. So, yes, it is true, Irene. We do have to wait for the mud to settle, for the water to clear. Absolutely. Hi, Emma. Hi, nice to see some familiar faces in here. So thank you. So we had a bit of a mix up because we haven't put our clocks forward here in the UK. So it's just after 5. So sorry about that, guys. Thank you for being patient and waiting. I want to start with saying that really, I think this is one of the most difficult subjects to get a hold on to. Besides having Neptune on my ascendant right now, and it's been there for quite a while, I just think Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, it's a very difficult concept to grasp. Um, the ambiguity and the vagueness of it. So, I'm trying to narrow this down into a narrative that we can understand it astrologically, because it's a complex one. So I just really want to start by saying that the journey of Saturn and Neptune and Pisces, it really needs to be understood in the context of all the other cycles going on in our solar system. Of course, the big one with Pluto going in and out of Capricorn to Aquarius. We're about to have a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction next year. We had a Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in Pisces last year, and we're still getting over the cycles of 2020, the Saturn, Pluto, and Capricorn in January, and the Jupiter, Saturn, and Aquarius in December. These are massive and they're huge in terms of history. We're living through a very epic era, which we will not really fully understand for decades, if not 100 years or so. And looking back at this particular period, because it's certainly taken its toll on humanity on so many levels and continues to do so. It's important to say that Saturn and Neptune, they journey all the way through Pisces together, but they never conjoin in this sign until in February 2026, when they come to 0 degrees of Aries. So their journey is very much about that. It's about, Saturn catching up with Neptune, coming up to that, and then conjoining at that 0 Aries, which will be huge. It will be, one of the biggest cycles that bookend this particular era. And of course, the differences with Saturn and Pisces, Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius, co-rules Aquarius. So as Pluto is going back from Capricorn to Aquarius, the dispositor with Saturn and Pisces, rules both of those signs. But in some ways, Saturn wears a different cloak. And even in Pisces, it wears a different cloak as it rules that Capricorn and Aquarius. It all wears different hats, if you like, because it does make a difference when Pluto is moving through those signs. And of course, the map of these planets, Saturn and Neptune, going through Pisces, it's going to change course. While it's going through this journey, it's going to change roads when Jupiter moves from Taurus to Gemini, which it will do in a couple of months' time. And then again, when it moves from Gemini to Cancer in June next year. So these are really, pivotal points where that again, Saturn just will be, Jupiter being the dispositor of Pisces is why I'm saying this. Again, it's still shifting and changing, and it's a really big year. 64 countries are having elections. Half the world's population are up to vote. This is an extraordinary time, unprecedented. Again, we keep living in these unprecedented times. That word is just forever being used, I feel. And so today I just want to talk about how this may affect us socially, but also I just want to touch on personally as well towards the end of this talk. And when we think about socially with Saturn and Neptune and Pisces, I mean, I really love Neptune and Pisces. I feel very privileged to have lived through Neptune in its modern, the modern rulership of Pisces. I think it's a beautiful time, and it's hard. It's really hard. It's a struggle and it's challenging, but it's also really quite beautiful. And, I mean, I've always been sort of, interested in the period when it was last in Pisces in the mid 1900s, 19th century, I should say, 1800s. So, this area really interests me. And there's so many innovations that came out of that era. One being, addressing oppression. When Saturn and Neptune were last in Pisces, it was a start, the ramping up of the abolition of slavery. It is a test of our humanity and our compassion. I often refer to in 2015, I think it was September, Saturn squared Neptune. Neptune was in Pisces and Saturn was in Sagittarius. And I remember Darby Costello at a conference putting up an image of the refugees and these children that had gone overboard and were in the sea. This is a very Saturn and Sag square Neptune and Pisces. And that was the start of our test of our humanity and our compassion. And at the time, children had died on their way to places like Lesbos and Crete, Turkey and Italy. And it was just an image that really struck me. And when you have Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces, this is even more so. This is a time where humanity is tested, and it's continued to be tested as Neptune goes through Pisces, particularly with refugee issues and things like that. And I think, even like preparing for this talk, it's really difficult. Saturn and Neptune and Pisces, as beautiful as it is, it can be very, very low. It can be very sluggish. And because it follows the Saturn-Pluto conjunction from January 2020, there seems to be, we're still in this, we're coming out of a global depression. It's very rarely do you find someone say, what a great week I had, what a great month I had. Well, it's starting to change. and you will all feel that too, but it's been pretty low energy, and that's pretty much attributed to so many planets, not only in a bundle in the sky, like even now we have it within a trine, and we've also just had the Pisces new moon as well, so today. So this is a sluggish time, but we are coming out of it. And the thing is, sorry, just to come to Margaret in the chat box, police are rousting a displaced woman. Right, okay, Margaret, cool. Thank you for letting us know. But yes, interesting synchronicity there. When you've got Saturn and Neptune and Pisces, there's a yearning for something much greater than ourselves. It's where we go beyond us, where we go beyond our own personal and individual needs. And we acknowledge suffering, whether it be our own or other people. And when also, I think with concepts of time and tense, this is a very interesting concept. Saturn and Neptune and Pisces is very concerned with the past. It is rooted in history and the past, yet Pluto in Aquarius only looks at the future. It cannot go back. And then you have Uranus and Taurus, which is very much, and Jupiter there too at the moment, which is very much about the present. So you have these different tenses going on at the moment, the past, the present, the future. And I think we can see, particularly younger generations struggling with, what's gone before, where are we at, and where are we going? So there's issues of, tense in terms of time, but also a concept of time. Pisces doesn't do linear. It doesn't do linear. It doesn't do calendar dates. It doesn't do, timing and things like that. It's a little bit more ambiguous, and so therefore, that sort of time restrictions may be addressed. And I say that in terms of easing up. It's like we get very anxious over time, busy lives, things like that. And the concept of time is going to change that. It sort of already has with people working from home, things like that, which is a lot more other different cycles as well. But there's more of a relaxed, there's more of, a bit more chilled. And then, because remembering Pisces is a mutable sign as well. So, and then, anything Neptunian, often engages us with the concept of soul and fate. I mean, even when you have Neptune transits, you got to do what's right for the soul, whatever that is. But sitting on a beach, going for a swim, whatever, doing something creative, whatever. There is something about honoring the soul. I know that's a religious term, but it's sort of been adapted throughout history as well. So our concepts of what will be in terms of fate is going to be spotlighted during this period. And there's some really fascinating things that go on with Saturn and Neptune and Pisces. For example, the developments in medical and healing. I mean, the American Federation of, I think of Medical Association or whatever, was when the last Saturn Neptune was in Pisces. But the arts, anything to do with the arts, fashion, thinking of Saturn and Neptune and Pisces, it's fashion, and the colors of Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. When we had Neptune and Pisces, the color turquoise, particularly in interior fashion and things like that, became very popular. And we'll find things like that in all forms of fashion. Music. When I did the talk for OPA on Saturn and Pisces, almost a year ago, I talked about music and talked about people that can play by ear and people that read music. That's the difference with Pisces, is Pisces is audiation, which is you can hear music by ear. It's more psychic. It's more unconscious. But you also find developments in intellectualism. So literature, poetry, things like that. Um, we can expect big changes. The oceans. I want to talk a little bit about that. The oceans and water and what that's going to mean. There's already every day there's something in the news about oceans and water in some form or another. And all things spiritual, which also includes astrology as well. But all things spiritual, particularly with the decline of religion in the last few decades, and particularly with millennial generations looking for, answers in terms of life, afterlife, pre-life, during life, things like that. All things spiritual. So there's going to be quite a movement in that level, and I'm going to talk about that as well. Media and social media. So when you Saturn and Neptune and Pisces is, media on steroids. And there is a lot of propaganda, and social media as well explodes. Anything with Pisces reaches out. It has the most enormous reach, more than any other. Neptune and has the largest reach. There's no boundaries, so there's nowhere it can't go. And what we can expect from this journey, Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, is a new world view, and a change in our perception, a change in our view of the planet, our view of nature, and our relationship with it, and also a new world view of our future. And that will undoubtedly come with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 Aries. I should say, even though it does conjoin at 0 Aries, there is also, it does conjoin at 29 as well. It doesn't become exact, but I mean, it's certainly within a 1-degree orb. So we do need to consider that too. And it's important to realize that 0 Aries will come straight after. So that relationship we need to consider very strongly. What does it mean from 29 Pisces to 0 Aries? So just want to take a little trip back, just to say, what's going on, what you can expect, just to remind people the last Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which is also, even though Saturn and Neptune don't conjoin for another 2 years, the characteristics of Saturn and Neptune still combined in 1989. I mean, Uranus was there too, and Uranus is more of the smasher. But the fall of the Berlin Wall, particularly for this part of the world, but I mean universally, was very much about unity. It was about collectiveness, and that is what the nature of when you've got Saturn and Neptune together, or certainly in Pisces. And then when you think of the last journey of Saturn and Neptune together through Pisces, which was from April 1847 till March 1849, when the abolition of slavery was gaining momentum, it's also important to note that the end of apartheid in South Africa ended during the last Saturn and Pisces in April 1994. Oh, that should be a 9 there, sorry about that, not 194, 1994. And also what happened during this period, it's also really important is and I'm not trying to advocate for a socialist regime here. When I say the Communist Manifesto, what is important, the Communist Manifesto came out in February, 21st of February, 1848, 3 days after Neptune ingressed into Pisces and Saturn was at 13 Pisces. This is a very pivotal point in history, because not only did it had a massive effect, of course, on economic theory going forward. Only, in 1842 did we start the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions in Earth. Jupiter Saturn first conjoined in Earth in 1802, and then in 1842 it started its unprecedented journey in the Earth signs, its conjunctions. So from 1842, for the next 160, 158 years, we had conjunctions in Earth signs only, which is very much about the economy. And then when we had Neptune move into Pisces, Karl Marx brought out the Communist Manifesto. And what is important about this particular point in history is it created a new way of thinking about the economy. And that is what my point is. It was a new way to think of it. And that's exactly what is on the table right now around the entire planet. It also, this period denotes a dark romantic period. And I'm not going to talk much. I did talk about that quite a bit last time when I was on the talked about Saturn in Pisces last year. But this is the dark romantic period was, it was the Gothic culture. It was coming out of the romantic period of almost 50 years, but it was considered the dark romantic period. Interesting, with Saturn and Neptune and Pisces, because it is a dark romance. That's, it is dark, it is sluggish, it is hard, it is muddy waters. And so, and then we also had at this time the return to paganism. There was a lot of drive to return to one with nature. And so paganism came forth. It was revived during that period, which is very interesting because I think this is what's also happening here. Since Neptune went into Pisces, over a decade ago, there has been, particularly with millennials going to the, living a much freer lifestyle, things like that, or wanting to. And going back to the more simplistic things in life. And of course, the medical developments, and I mean that in terms of healing, pharmaceuticals, botany, homeopathy, and all of those Piscean forms. And so this is the sort of thing you can expect that will come with the Saturn Neptune through Pisces, which we're, halfway through. And there's also, I do want to just make the point of with Pisces, it is all about water. It is all about the oceans. It's also to do with liquid and gas and things like that. But what we're seeing right now is, a really crucial pivot in history on our oceans with ice melting and sea levels rising because of that, partly because of that. So, these massive cliffs, and if you look at Greenland and things like, and the Arctic and things like that, you're seeing ice melting for the first time and on a level that we've never known before. It's also making a difference to the ocean currents that we have. So the ocean currents, the cold currents, the warm currents, how they move around the globe. These Gulf streams are changing, they're shifting. Fish migrant paths are changing. And this is not something, this is going to change everything on our planet. It's going to change the environment, and it's going to change, weather patterns. It's going to change our entire, whatever export every country does, for example, that's all up to change. I mean, it's as we all know, things are weather patterns are changing, but this is affecting the oceans, and consequently, the oceans are shifting weather patterns as well. Coastal erosions. There's the images of some places in America, but like places like Australia, places like the Great Barrier Reef, places everywhere. I mean, there's places in the UK that cannot sell, properties that cannot sell, even though they are like a quarter of a mile back from the cliff's edge. They've been told that their property won't be there in 50 years. This is, quite massive in terms of how we live and our economy and things like that. But also issues with water. I've been bantering on for ages, ever since Neptune went into Pisces, about if we can actually desalinate water. We can do so many things in terms of, what we can do with water. But we have yet not been able to find a way to desalinate it. And so many people die of dehydration every year. There is water shortages everywhere. And Alka says, I'm thinking about the Thwaites Glacier doing it, saying, yeah, exactly. We are living in a very, very interesting time. And it's dire, on many levels. And more children die of polluted water every year on the African continent. And this is a serious matter that needs to be addressed. Polluted water, water shortage, desalination of it. And, hopefully with Saturn and Neptune and Pisces, this will start to be rectified, certainly be brought into the attention, into the consciousness of everyone. And we can do something more about it. There's also really fascinating discoveries in the deep sea. In the deep sea, like there was an artifact found, I can't remember where it was here in the UK. I think it was near Dover, that it was prehistoric. This particular creature was like back a million years or something, ridiculous. And we're going to learn a lot about who we share the planet with. Yes, Lorraine, regarding the corporate ownership of water around the planet. Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, GE, General Electric has poured trillions into trying to desalinate water and hasn't been able to do it. But I'm sure that when they do, it will be commercialized, monetized. Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Water is going to become a huge commodity as Pluto moves into Aquarius. On its journey from November, air, oxygen's already become a commodity, whether it be oximeters since COVID, or oxybars in Delhi that people pop into, or airspace over buildings that people are buying. Air and oxygen have become a commodity. Water, will of course as well. It will be paying a lot more for water going forward, as it will be valued, more highly, unfortunately for not the best reasons. But the discoveries, it's really this is one of the most exciting areas. We don't know what is living at the bottom of our oceans. We have no idea of what is living there. We have a family friend who's a marine biologist, and he wrote in his book that got Book of the Year in New Zealand that the ocean actually covers 97% of the Earth's surface volume. We know it only covers roughly 75% of the coverage of the planet, but if you look at the volume of the ocean, it's actually 97%. And he said one day that if aliens were to land on the planet, the most likely place for them would be at the bottom of the ocean. And we have no idea what lives down there, which is so mysterious and very Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces. So it's very exciting to know what possibly we could discover down there, who we share this planet with.
Excuse me,
Uh,
Wendy.
yes, yes.
I don't want to be remiss in leaving Sat out. There's a couple questions, and I think the first one you answered. Would you associate Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces with the current wars for water? I think you've pretty much answered that. And then also they're asking, do you think it is also associated with the immunological illnesses, especially with the COVID and new vaccines precedent?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I didn't see that. I didn't have this.
That's okay. It's in the question box.
Oh, sorry,
Yes, that's
sorry, I
why.
haven't got that.
It wasn't in the
Um,
chat.
okay, so yeah, feel free to put it in the chat, guys, because I'm keeping an eye on it as well. Um, immunology, yes, definitely. I think that's, there's a lot of things about the post-COVID thing. There's a lot of, I think, cycles attributed to there's a huge wave in um, autoimmune deficiency problems. I think a lot of that's attributed to COVID, or if not COVID, the whole concept, or the whole thing about COVID, the whole Saturn, Pluto in Capricorn period, lockdown, all these sort of things. Yes, Pluto in Aquarius. There's a lot of factors I think contribute, but yes, Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces is a like an immune deficiency. It's a very low energy. It's a depletion. The characteristics of it are, they deplete. Um, they do other beautiful things too, which I will get to. But yes, and sorry, what was the other one? Did you ask? Sorry, Carol.
That's okay.
Was
It was
was
just, would you associate Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces with the current wars for water?
Yes, definitely, absolutely, yeah, and it's going to get more so. Yeah, absolutely. And there's people, I mean, it's going to get, very strange, with this water thing. It's funny. I grew up in a small town in New Zealand, where we grew up on tank water. So, we had to be very careful with flushing toilets. We never bathed, well, of course we bathed, but we had to conserve water. We grew up like that, so I'm still of that mindset. So, when I go to Canada, Toronto, to see my nieces, and if they don't wash their tins out and their recycling, it beeps on their bin and they get fined for that. And I'm like, and I don't understand that we waste water by cleaning. It's a very, we're sort of caught between, we just haven't quite got it right yet, and we waste water ridiculously. And there's a lot of, I think the water wars are gonna, get much more heavy, going forward, particularly as Neptune gets to the last degree of Pisces. It's all going to kick in when that happens. Yeah, it's important to say too that that's what happened previously. Um, yeah, I'm just trying to think if I got that slide. No, I haven't. Sorry. Um, yeah, there's it's gonna ramp up, definitely, because it's going to be commercialized. That's really what it comes down to. um that is what the movie The Abyss tapped into. Yes, I love that movie, The Abyss. Yes. There's a lot of cool movies like that. Yeah, interesting. Waterworld came out on the last Saturn and Pisces, and was the largest funded movie of all time up to that point. And the Titanic also came out when Saturn was in Pisces, and that was the largest money-making film of all time up to that point. So that's Neptune. Neptune inflates everything, and I want to sort of come to that too. Um, oh, Marlene. Oh, that's interesting. Well, okay. I didn't know that because the GE is still trying to do it. So, okay, that's very, very interesting. That El Paso in Texas has a large successful water desalination. The reason GE always said they couldn't do it was because of the cost. Alki asked, it's about the lymphatic system and all these viruses and pathogens clattering up the immune system. Yeah. Well, when you think of Neptune and Saturn and Pisces, yeah, that's exactly, it is about blockages. It is about um, clearing passages, things like that. It's very, when I guess I'm not a traditional astrologer, but it is, it's wet and it's cold and um, and when you think about Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces, it's a lot of phlegm and things like that. That's what it is. It's phlegmy, that sort of thing. Our bodies are too full of toxins. Exactly. We don't even need embalmed anymore. Exactly. Yeah. Um, And Sangat says Saturn is associated with toxic. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so do feel free to put any questions in the chat box, because I'm keeping an eye on that. Or tell me, Carol, if I need to be looking at.
Yes, and
Uh,
I can monitor them too. Thank you.
yeah. Oops, I'm just. So I just want to say, from an economic point of view, you know, the whole world has been battling with inflation. You know, Neptune is the most inflationary planet. It's not Jupiter. Jupiter is, you know, about expansion, but Neptune is the most inflationary. Any financial astrologer, when Neptune, you know, is triggering something, it's going to inflate. Now, Neptune has been in Pisces since what, 2011. So you you have to expect inflation. And what I find quite strange is that every country is trying to solve this on a national level. It's a global problem. It's a global issue, as was the financial crash in 2008. It's now global. It's very difficult to have a national problem without certainly not either being caused or having consequences on countries abroad. You know, we have to solve these problems globally. This is, but you know, and people are having elections based on inflation, but they're not taking on board that this is a global issue. So you know, and also you note that Jupiter, Uranus are in Taurus. So this again is going to, you know, inflate things. It's going to bring new different forms of economies, for example, cryptocurrencies, that sort of thing. And it was only last year in April that we had, or no, it was in 2022 that we had the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in Pisces. And for the last 4 years, Neptune has been unaspected for a very, very long time, off and on. So it's not surprising that inflation has been such a you know, topical subject for politics, economists, and also, you know, rising interest rates and rising everything. And I just want to flip to this particular, I know this seems a bit random, but I think it's important. I did this graph in 2008. And I did this graph on the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions and historical UK interest rates. But UK interest rates do mirror the US as well. And anything in Pisces is going to inflate, and anything in with Neptune triggering is going to inflate. This particular graph was on interest rates and looking at Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions and also oppositions. So you can see here from 1963 here, the first peak here is on the Jupiter-Saturn opposition. And this was in 1970. And interest rates went from, you know, went right up to 8%. And then, of course, they go down. There's a bit of, you know, it's not so volatile there, really. But, of course, in 1980, 81, Jupiter-Saturn conjoined in Libra. Bang, up here, interest rates went to 15%. And in 1988, I think you had a bit of a crash in the US as well. We had a very big crash in 1988 in the UK because of interest rates being at 15%. Then you had the opposition here in 1990. And they went up a little. So they went down, the crash went down, then they went up a bit. And then Jupiter-Saturn conjoined in Taurus in 2000, the last Earth conjunction. So here's the first air conjunction, 1980-81, and here's 2000. Well, now we've just had the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius at the end of 2020. In air, and interest rates around the world have skyrocketed. Not as much as the first air conjunction in 80-81. This is Jupiter-Saturn. I know we're talking about Saturn and Neptune and Pisces, but this is relevant because Neptune and Pisces inflates even more than normal. Even more than normal. So what's happening is we need to take a view, a different view of our economic system. It doesn't work in the same way that it used to. You know, we're not in the Jupiter, Saturn, Earth cycles anymore. So the standard of living and all that sort of thing is not going to be as important as our brain and ideas and concepts and relationships and all the things that air represents. And Saturn and Neptune and Pisces is going to inflate that. So along with the other cycles, it's going to have an overhaul of the current economic and political systems and the social institutions. But the good thing about that, there's going to be a shift towards unity and globalization, which is, you know, that is where I personally feel that the biggest problem we have is the resistance to globalization. We have every country has a real problem with resistance. Every single one has a resistance to globalization. I don't know what the solution is, but I do think it's part of the problem. We can't go back. We actually can't rewind. So we need to, you know, think of how we're going to work with that, how we're going to deal with our borders with that, and things like that. How will things shift personally for us? Well, I think the question is, how familiar is anyone with Neptune, Pisces, or the 12th house? Sorry, that question mark, I don't know what's there. It should be here. Sorry. Do you hold hands with Neptune? Do you hold hands with planets in Pisces? You know, are you familiar with that 12th house energy? And I think when we start looking at, you know, part of helping to deal with that is looking where our own Saturn and Neptune are. How do they relate to each other? Are they in good aspect with each other? Are they comfortable? Are we comfortable with our own Saturn Neptune? And it will also tell us where they are in the chart, where this Saturn Neptune conjunction, sorry, Saturn Neptune journey through Pisces, how it sits in our own chart. How does it sit? Where do we feel overwhelmed? Where is our own Saturn and Neptune? Where is it? What house is it in? What sign is it in? And Jupiter being the co-ruler of Pisces, where is that in the chart? Where is that in your own chart too? How do these planets relate to each other? How are you dealing with this? Because it's a difficult and complex and really multi-layered journey, these two planets going through Pisces. What do you have in Pisces and at what degree? I mean, certainly anyone with 0 degrees of cardinal come February 2026 is going to have a really, you know, massive effect, life-changing effect on people. It can be very, very positive. I want to be really clear on that. And of course, how 12th house or Neptunian are you to understand, you know, can you, you know, is because this particular journey can be, like I said, it can be very depleting. You know, it can be very depressing. And so, you know, as an astrologer, I always feel we need to look at this and turn it around, reframe this, you know, the situation wherever we possibly can. And it's hard with planets in Pisces, but it is certainly, you know, achievable. Helen says, would you say the resistance to globalization comes from Saturn being in Pisces, that is restricting the unified quality of Pisces? Helen, the answer to that, somewhat, yes, but also the Pluto, Capricorn, Aquarius, that's, you know, that as well. You know, Pluto in Capricorn wants to sort of maintain the status quo, and Pluto in Aquarius wants to break it down. And again, you know, the image of the Berlin Wall is very poignant here. So it's, you know, it's combination of these cycles. Right, Peter. So you're very familiar with this. Yeah, and it's tough with people with planets in Pisces.
When Oh, I'm sorry,
Yep,
Wendy. We have another
yes,
question that came in
yes.
the question box. And if you guys could just go ahead and put them in the type box, the chat box, it's a little easier for us to see. We'd appreciate that. Um, is if Saturn is cold, contracting, how does it inflate?
If could you say that again? Sorry,
They're
Carol.
asking if Saturn is cold and contracting, How does it inflate?
Well, it's in its own sign. And Neptune inflates at any, whenever it's aspecting or in a, certain position. Um, Saturn being there does regulate it to a certain extent, but Saturn is weakened in Pisces too. So Neptune in Pisces has just the most enormous, there is no there is no boundaries. And Saturn in Pisces doesn't, it tries to regulate it. And when Pluto is in Capricorn, it can, but not when it's in Aquarius. Saturn is weakened and there are no boundaries. It is the most inflationary. If you ever look at any stock market, any crazy point and, off the scale, then Neptune will have something, will have something, will have played a part in that, would have been significant in that timing. I hope that answers your question. Sorry. Emily says, I have Moon and Pisces in the 8th house, an aspect with Neptune and Saturn. So yeah, so you're feeling this. Yeah, you're feeling this, and that's what, but if it's an aspect with Saturn and Neptune, you also understand it. It's very hard, for people with planets and other mutable signs squaring and opposing as well. There's Saturn and Neptune and Pisces can be very anxiety. It's very overwhelming. I think some of the challenges with Saturn and Neptune and Pisces, particularly with Pluto going back and forth from Capricorn to Aquarius. What the challenges, these are the challenges. Saturn and Neptune and Pisces, it invites us to remember, which can be very painful. Neptune is pain. And when you have Saturn and Neptune together, it is despair, the same despair we had since 2020. That sort of despair that, what is going to come forth. It's unknowing. It is the nature of Saturn and Neptune and Pisces to be unknowing. But it's also part of, Saturn, Neptune and Pisces remit to also surrender to a certain extent. Yeah. Yeah, cool. Thank you, Emily. Yeah. And the challenge is what to believe. What to believe. What do we believe anymore? The decline in religion, and I mean, I'm not a religious person. Well, I have been many times in my life. That's what happens when you have a Sag moon in the 9th, square Jupiter. So yeah, I had many, many religions as a young person. But when you've had a decline in almost every faith, you've got a population on the planet that don't know what to believe anymore. And this is, it's a despair again. There's often, people feel lost or confused. And it is, Saturn and Neptune and Pisces is about low energy. It's about low energy and everything feeling darker. Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces is the shadows in somewhat, and because of that low energy, people can feel very depressed. And the suffering, either personally or of others, can feel very overwhelming. And we're all feeling that, and we've felt it for 4 years now, and it hasn't gone away. That feeling of suffering has not gone away. And now there's suffering, and I mean, there's always suffering in parts of the world, but now it's becoming more acknowledged. There's wars going on and people are aware of it. I mean, the great thing about Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces, when Neptune first went into Pisces, the whole world became a photographer. Everyone was a photographer. In the 1850s and 60s, when Neptune was last in Pisces, the amount of innovations on photography enabled film to come forth in the 1880s and early 1890s. So the development of that, and now you've got Neptune and Pisces again, and the whole world are photographers. And there's something about that, and also with Pluto and Capricorn, there's nowhere to hide. So there is a lot more transparency now. It's very difficult, even though there's propaganda and there's a lot of lies out there and things like that, and media BS and all that sort of thing. There's also people that are on the ball as well. It's hard to hide. It's hard to hide. You know, I was at my osteopath a few weeks ago, and he wouldn't share with me photos that he had been given by one of his other patients, who was a BBC reporter correspondent from the Gaza Strip. And he said, I can't show you. I can't show you. You will never get over it. There's things that, you know, and we've never had that circulation, ability to circulate. That is the reach of Neptune and Saturn and Pisces, particularly Neptune. Just coming back to the chat box, Melissa says, Neptune conjunct my own Mercury, made me get checked for Alzheimer's. Brain is fine now, waiting for Saturn to conjunct. Right. Well, well done you for getting it checked. And it doesn't always mean, mean that, Neptune on Mercury is quite beautiful as well, Melissa. You know, there's also the beautiful side to that. Yeah. Yeah, sure, Margaret, a new COVID vaccination. Yes, well, unfortunately, pharmaceutical companies are a major beneficiary of Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces, and as we've seen. Yeah, exactly, Melissa, and you will feel that suffering, exactly. Christina, hi, Christina. Polls show shift to no designated religion. Yeah, is now the largest demographic. However, spiritual, not religious, is just starting to be asked. Well, it's an ambiguous word, spiritual, isn't it? I mean, what is it? I don't even really know what that means myself. But yeah. Irene says Neptune's been on her Jupiter for ages, and she's just found the deep-seated concepts I use for decision-making, which are based on your belief system. I'm definitely more compassionate and more ethical, I suppose. Fabulous. Lovely to hear. Sangat says, great disillusionment about everything, hard to believe anything at all. Exactly. And there's sort of, and there's something exactly, and as long as we know that, this is the astrology. And it's really, I know this sounds very dismissive, but, I don't mean it to be, but, this, whatever the politics and the economy and all this at the time, it's still going to be Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. So there's always going to be a sort of a bit of a dark cloud that comes with that. However, yes, right, Marlene, that's great. Well, this is my positives. I really believe that we can make the most of that. Like I said, I have Neptune on my ascendant, and have had for a long time, and it's still going to be there for a while. And that degree is rampant in my family. So my whole family. So I'm, I get it. I understand. But I sort of feel like sometimes I need to surrender. I do need to surrender to the Neptune on my. I need to do that. And in order to do that, there's different ways we can do it. I love it through music. I love music as most people do. But it's finding the genre that actually inspires you, whether it be Bach or Bob Marley or I don't know, whatever floats your boat, really. And it's about activating your imagination. Like, is it Melissa that said that she has Neptune on her Mercury? Part of me, I feel like, it's like, this is what, write a song, write a poem, write a journal, write your dreams, and or speak it or record it. And, this is such an inspiring time. It's magic. It's really, really magic. Right, Emma. Yeah, exactly. Well done, Emma. Yeah. Um, Brenda Lee says she recommends structured practice, simple and regular breathing, dance, meditation, creativity. Exactly. Whatever floats your boat, yoga, Tai Chi, whatever that is, whatever your, and the woman with the moon, Saturn, Neptune, find it in your cooking, do it in your diet, and it's like finding a way to bring inspiration into your life, and it is there. I know it's hard to see with Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces. You've got to wade through those murky waters, and you know how that feels between your toes, and you know how it feels, and it's cold, and it's dirty, and it's really uncomfortable, but actually it's really rich and it's beautiful. We just can't see it. We just can't see it. But if, you know, tapping into the unconscious, changing our perception, altering our own perception. And, you know, I think with Neptune, Pisces, that, you know, it's important to be honest and even with yourself, if only with yourself, you know, just be honest. You know, Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces can drag you into somewhere unknown, but it doesn't have to. It doesn't actually have to, you know. It's you know, it's can be very, very beautiful. It is a time where I think the most compositions and paintings and the creative arts and music, God, the genre that's going to come out of this era, I am so excited. The instruments that are going to come are just, you know, it's going to be fascinating. And I think it's important to make a difference no matter how small that is. Whether it's, you know, I have a niece that will be in tears because a frog is on the street and she has to stop and she has to get the frog and she has to take it to water. It's so moving. It's so moving. And for her, it's everything. And I think it's really important to make those sacrifices, to be compassionate. It's very easy to, you know, desensitize when you've got Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces because it's so overwhelming. Coming back to the chat box, saying it said, I feel like being adrift in the ocean. Yeah, together with the Pluto demolition in Capricorn, it seems that all structures of society have crumbled down and one feels flooded with the collective unconscious. No more points of reference. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and Vivian says Saturn on my ascendant. So it's yeah, it's yeah, there's very little faith. We have very little faith in anything, but that does not mean that it will not be restored. Stacey says, as soon as Saturn moved into Pisces, I started doing deep water aquafit and enjoy the music immensely while exercising in the water. And Neptune has been opposing my Virgo Sun and Mercury over the last few years. Well done, Stacey. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I went into, so I knew I had to just get into the water. And sometimes, you know, just have to do that and acknowledge the dreams. But I think it's important to also say too, it's important to say that because Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces so drags us back to the past, it's important to say, no, it's okay. We don't need to do that and to let it go. Forgive, forgive ourselves, forgive others, and create new dreams. We sometimes hang on to the dreams that we had, you know, and sometimes we know with clients, and you can even dreams we had when, and this is a very Saturnian thing too, not just the Pisces. You know, we have goals when you were 7 years old, and you know the new goals we have the Saturn opposition at 14, 21, and you know all these other we have, you know, not just goals, but we have aspirations as well. And I think it's really hard for people to actually say that's not that actual dream doesn't fit me anymore. I need new ones. And I think that's really hard for some people. But I think that's what's going to happen. We need to create our own new dreams. Um, Carol, is my hour up? Is that
You're
can I just
you actually can have a few minutes if you need a few minutes, Wendy, and if you're finished,
great?
that's fine too.
No, that's cool. I just maybe just want to I have used this particular quote, which I'm going to talk about in a sec, before, but I do want to remind people the conjunction of the Saturn and Neptune. So it will be at 29 Pisces and then it will go to 0 degrees. This is going to, you know, and you're going to hear a lot of sort of negative stuff about the Saturn Neptune at Aries. Again, I take a more optimistic view. Um, After the suffering of Saturn Neptune through Pisces, the 0 Aries is like a fresh spring, I think. Um, I think that it's pushing the reset button. Um, and because of the previous 2 years, it will need to. It's about cleaning the slate. It's about a brand new, fresh canvas. It's about starting over. And I think it's going to give the sort of different rites of passage to people. It's going to allow us, permit us to start again. Um, and I think that it's a very positive time. I know a lot of astrologers may disagree, but it's because it's such a raw degree and things like that. And it is. But I've also I've also had to help sheep be born and help a sheep birth her lambs. And I know what it feels like to be in that really bloody fresh, zero Aries landscape. But it's also has a really beautiful outcome as well. So I really think we need to invest in that. And as of course we move into the Saturn, Neptune, and Aries, um, Pluto will be in Aquarius, Uranus will be in Gemini, and things will not be sluggish at all. Not at all. Jupiter would have moved into Leo, and you're going to have all these planets in air and fire. And I'm not saying that's better. I'm not saying it's better, but it's going to be an incredible moment after 6 years of such sluggish, of a sluggish environment. And I just want to come back to this quote once again by André Barbeau, French mundane astrologer who wrote for 7 decades, who passed away a few years back. And he talks about this conjunction in 2026 as centrally placed at the beginning of Aries and is in a triangular quartet of planets with a double sextile as to a trine to Uranus and Gemini. So the sextile between Saturn, Neptune at 0 Aries will be sextile Uranus and Gemini and sextile Pluto and Aquarius. And he says it is the most benefic configuration of the century. And its interplanetary partnership will work for the best in a splendid relaunch of civilization. It contains a harmonious relationship between primordial polar opposites, the coming together of the external and the internal, rational and spiritual, mind and soul. Human beings surpassing themselves while experiencing life on a higher level. And so I agree wholeheartedly with André Barbeau, and he's never got a prediction wrong, from being World War II to Vietnam War to the COVID to pandemic. He's predicted all of it. He is hence why he was considered the father of modern mundane astrology. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I can take questions if I've got time. And coming back to the chat box.
Yes, we have a few. Can you spell his name? I'll go ahead and write
Oh
his
yes.
name down
Well, no,
and
it's on the here. If you look at the slide here.
yes, and I will go ahead in your mailing. I will put his name in the mailings too, so you can, I know I have a couple of books and
Yeah,
I'll write
yeah,
the book names and Andre's information too. Although he's deceased, you can look up those books online. They're
yeah.
fantastic.
You can buy them. The Astrological Association. We asked André Barbeau if we could translate his books from French to English, and he gave us planetary cycles as well to translate, which we did. So you might find it cheaper on the Astrological Association's website.
Oh, good. I'll
Um,
put that down there
yeah.
too, Wendy. Yes. In
Thanks,
fact, I
Carol.
got mine from Roy
Yes. Yeah.
Gillett.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Fantastic
Yeah.
book. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
And does anyone have any last minute questions for Wendy?
Thank you for your lovely
Just a lot
comments,
of
guys. This was
thanks, and they enjoyed your talk, and it was wonderful. And That's fantastic. And we thank you all today for staying with us and enjoying this presentation with us. Again, I will be sending out the recording later to you today, and I will add all those extra links in. I'll put the
Thank you.
link for Wendy's mentorship program that's coming up in May, and also Andre's work, some of the books, and the Astrological Association's information, so you can reach out to them. Anything
Thank you,
else?
Carol.
Thank
Not for me,
you.
that's fine. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and you have a wonderful, blessed day. Bye-bye now.
You bye, Carol. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Wendy. So good to see you again. Much love. Bye-bye.
Good to hear you too. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye now.